Hey, live stream. Live stream. To me, live streams are potentially boring unless you're here. Oh, let's see. Hello? Hello? Yes, I can. I can. I love you. I'll be right down there. So, I'll have to. I could end this one, or I could, let's see, turn off my audio and leave you with Zach Stein, which is who I kind of want to talk about. So, Um, audio input capture, turn off.
I don't think operate in bad faith, even though they're competing. But the postmodern public sphere, the late capitalist kind of postmodern public sphere, you could argue has mostly been overrun with bad faith communication. If you combine all the effects of advertising and propaganda, etc. So maybe that helps clarify what I was saying.
Evan McMullen, you got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So my question is sort of in a similar vein as Ariel's, I think, but I'm interested in a specific aspect of this. So to me, as she was pointing out, one of the most difficult aspects of having good faith communication involves the fact that we have very different cultural groups that nonetheless share physical and social proximity, which seem to have adopted mutually incompatible reality tunnels or working ontologies with such fundamentally different organizing principles and assumptions that the process of reaching any sort of common ground at all can take like many, many hours, days, even years of good faith dialogue. And this appears to me to be the result of deliberate moves by fairly savvy political and economic actors engaging in bad faith communication in order to cause this situation. So doing that requires a lot less, causing the situation seems to require a lot less time investment than fixing the situation. So I'm curious about this dynamic. And specifically, you talked earlier about the sort of rehumanization step. Like, okay, so I'm dealing with a guy, he's got a very different worldview, reality tunnel, ontology, what have you, than me. And this is going to make communication, even when done in the best of faith between us, very difficult. So I'm specifically curious about how this works in your view between this rehumanization step. So I've got a guy who's coming from a very different place. We disagree about some almost axiomatic things in our ontologies. And yet I want to have a good faith conversation where we can talk about, say, a local policy debate, like in my small town that I live in, or something productively, without constantly getting pulled off into the very different assumptions we might make about value and how to realize value, or something like that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
I mean, what do you think? Because again, it's very context specific. So like depending on who your neighbor is, where you live, if you're in a rural or an urban area, if the axiomatic disagreements are in some areas as opposed to other areas. And so they know the post-conventional in general tends to like constellate for uniqueness. It doesn't constellate for routineness, which means it requires a high degree of like consciousness and adaptability in every conversation. That's like a very vague thing I can say.
So, I actually think Evan McMullen is, as far as people that deserves your attention, Evan McMullen potentially deserves your attention more than Zach Stein. And you can just tell from that question. If you were to go back and listen to that like 3 or 4 times, you can tell that um, what Zach is missing is that he is accusing. I'm going to integrate the accuser. He is accusing people of bad faith acting. And the question is he doing it? So I sent an email to Peter Lindbergh. I kind of shared the email with Evan McMullen, and then I copied it for Zach Stein. I might even try to send one to like Jordan Hall. The thing is Zach, I sent him an email like a month ago, and he never responded. And that's a data point. That's an experiment, and that's a data point. And there's a question: is he a bad faith actor? Because often when we're accusing, we're really just that what we're perceiving is ourselves. So every time you accuse, you have the opportunity to say, "Hey, am I doing this thing I'm accusing others of doing?" And because you're human, you will be doing the thing, like um, in some capacity. Like you might have to stretch it, right? Thich Nhat Hanh says that you can see yourself in the clouds, right? You can see yourself in the stars. So yeah, you might have to stretch it, but it is true. Like in a certain way, we are the clouds and we are the stars. So in this, there is a way of viewing the world in which you can see where you are participating in that thing that is the essence of the thing that the person is doing that you are accusing them of doing. Um, but often it's not even like that far away. It's like most of the time, you're actually doing it more so than the person you are accusing of doing it. So, and as I do it, right, I'm accusing Zach. So I have to be careful. And so I accuse Zach of ignoring my email. That's what I'm accusing him of. And so, um, and I've ignored emails, right? The question would be is what does your inbox look like? How many unread messages do you have in your inbox? And I could go check, right? And it's not pretty, right? So I have like a bunch of email inboxes, which is what I need to be doing for the thing I get paid to do. But I've got a weird arrangement here. I'll be like tomorrow morning, I'll have to wake up extra early and do some work. So I have 67 unread for my oldest email account that I have. And then I have 34 unread for my business email. Some of those are just like CCs. So sometimes I'll CC my business account, or from my business account, I might CC my personal. So yeah, um, there's unread messages. But so you can develop a process of, well, how long will you go before you check your inbox, and clean it and clear it. And so yeah, Zach's not good at that. I'll accuse him of that. I think he's not good at that. Um, and then there's a question of who do you respond to? So for a while, I was responding to every recruiter, and there's a ton of recruiters. And so yeah, in a way, I'm like a recruiter. When I'm reaching out to these people, I'm attempting to recruit. So, and I have been ignoring recruiters. So perhaps um, there's something I could do for that. Like every recruiter that reaches out to me, I could just hit reply and share a link. And so I can go through, I should be able to, ideally, I would have a system where I could say recruiter, 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 and I would identify the 10 recruiters who contacted me in the last week, and I would say reply all. And I would just share a link to my blog post that tells them my situation, right? And this would be good because my situation is that, and it's evolving, so I can update that blog post based on how my situation changes. But to the recruiters, it's like, I'm not interested in money right now. And um, I would be interested if you did, like, if you want to give money to this project, I'll connect you with this project. Um, and so I could have a list of projects that I'm interested in, like supporting. I want to see them grow. They're like little seeds, and I like to see them grow. So yeah, as I accuse Zach, I can flip it around. But I like Evan. Um, and yeah, maybe I should take notes, right? Notes, notes. Um, so this would be like a process improvement, and I would respond to recruiters with link. And so that would be something I could do just to step up my game a little bit. And you could even have a tool to help you do that. Email, I'm not a big fan of email. That's why on my website, I point people at a Discord server. It's just because then, like you can go to my website and you can go to my Discord server and you can kind of get my information. And so, yeah, I could just respond to these recruiters and say, here's my website. But I probably should have a link and say, dear recruiter, respond to recruiters with a dear recruiter blog post link. So there you go. So I can't control what Zach does. Like Zach, he doesn't check his inbox, and or right ignores someone like me who might come off as a recruiter. And so there's a question. It's like, is this Gavin guy? Is he a bad faith actor? And then if we are bad faith actors, do we even know we are bad faith actors? To Evan McMullen's point, it's like maybe we just have different values, right? Just our axioms are not aligned. And so from one person's perspective, we appear to be bad faith actors, which is, it's sad. For example, if there's a recruiter out there trying to get in touch with me who's going to be the perfect bridge, right? The perfect bridge for me and, the ideal job. Um, but, there's just, it's a lot of noise out there. All right. Mm-hmm. 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 Your clips. Your clips. That's pretty good website building there. It's not completely easy to build out a good library. Here's my 3 clips. Your Lord provides your daily bread. That's from this Curtis Yarvin talking about Waft Lord. And I was reminded of, I tried to, work with missile defense and I was trying to solve the problem which we had in the Middle East. And I realized it's like, well, whoever is able to provide for the food and the shelter, the basic necessities, they are going to have the most influence. So that started leading me to some answers there. But that's kind of what is meant by the word Lord. The Lord, your Lord is the one who provides your sustenance, your needs. And so I think Curtis Yarvin was talking about political ideas and strategies where the government can become your Lord and you have to obey your Lord. So whether you're on like what people call welfare or whether you're middle class welfare, which is what I did in missile defense. The government contractors, those are all middle class welfare because the government is their Lord, provides their bread. And it's not a terrible situation, but you should try to get out of that, right? Bullshit at church was kind of funny, and great work was the one from yesterday.
People who have done great work.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, I'm open to increasing the price size too over time. So if it turns out like, hey, somebody really really kicked ass, and somehow there's not a price for them. I'll add some more to the price.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want somebody to have like spent like, you know, massive blood, sweat, and tears, have done something useful, and then get nothing for it. That would be pretty bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the issue. And then how does he even identify the people who put in the blood, sweat, and tears and didn't get anything out of it? Like, this is the human resource problem. Or I could reframe it as education at scale, which is how I framed it for Zach Stein. All right, let's go through. What am I doing? Well, as usual, oh, I need to pay attention to that. So I have something called the fires. So you don't want to be firefighting. So I have alerts to go into the fire channel. It's actually it has the phrase fire alarm in it. It's just a bunch of noise. Come on, nothing useful. It's false alarm. False alarm. Okay. Then I have my Lord, the person I report to, essentially. And so if you your Lord who provides your bread, and obviously there's the bread you eat to sustain your body, and then maybe there's the bread you eat to sustain your soul, maybe two different kinds of lords. But you have to try, or my strategy has been to develop a useful set of skills that are valuable. So, yeah, that's the thing when I pay attention to like Zach Stein. I don't know about his useful set of skills, whereas I'm pretty sure Evan McMullen has a set of skills that are more valuable than Zach Stein. Like if I go out here in the woods and drop off, Zach Stein in the woods and drop off Evan McMullen in the woods, who would do better? That's now obviously you can drop someone off in a different situation and things could change. Well, I'm going to give my attention to my Lord of the real bread, and I'm going to leave you with this video. We'll keep letting it play because this is kind of this was my last thing I did in the space where I'm trying to participate on a larger scale to some degree, and I encounter people and it feels like they are bad faith. And it's just, how do you define bad faith? I think it's just my understanding of the problems and the answers is different, and my goals are different than Zach Stein, right? Mine are closer to Evan McMullen.
As with the example with the bike, if it is possible to get down to places where, as in meal preparation or neighborhood cleanup or things of that nature, where you're at a sensory motor and representational level kind of conversations, and then build trust in those areas, and often also recognize weaknesses and unwillingnesses in those areas. The left-right divide in the United States often is also the divide between the talking classes and the kind of classes that actually manipulate physical objects in space, like your plumbing, right? And so bridging the divide between the talking classes and those classes that manipulate the physical world requires often getting down to what can be shared in common, which is some kind of, radically local problem. But yes, at the level of axiomatic abstractions, where both parties have been propagandized since age 5, how long will it take to actually bridge those very abstract ideological differences? That can take a long time, which is why you have to have some kind of foundation of cooperation on a shared project that's in both of your interests to solve. that needs to be solved regardless of those commitments and axiomatic kind of basically, thought terminating cliches you've collected from years of being propagandized and advertised into being unable to think for yourself, right? Which is, the question of how to get out of that simulation and into conversations about reality is a hard conversation to have because the simulation is deep.
Right. So this is essentially the exact type of situation I'm asking about, because I do a lot of shared projects with hands kind of stuff, right? Like local farms, that kind of thing, like going fixing things, doing stuff for people, building stuff. I have good relationships with a lot of people who might disagree with me pretty strongly on the higher level abstract stuff founded on that type of interaction. And yet I notice that there seems to be a very sort of, triggered, limbic, hijacked, whatever you want to call it, kind of response when like a certain barrier of non-locality is crossed. And this barrier can become crossed even when talking about extremely local and relevant, say policy issues, right? Where you essentially can come pretty close to indexically pointing at the sort of consequences that would be had for our shared endeavors and meat space or whatever. And yet there's a real hard bridge to cross there with, for example, like I've seen this a lot over the past few years with COVID and how that should be treated in local communities, despite the fact that you may have, built a shed with this dude or whatever.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. And then again, this is an open question. I mean, I think, a few things worth saying is that the concept of teacherly authority is not irrelevant here, which is to say, in both directions, both parties usually have something to teach the other. And, the question of how to arrange for contexts, again, it's not just up to you. You need a container where there's an allowance for a reciprocating teacherly authority. And in those specific, in the abstract domains, which means, agreeing to be, quote unquote, exposed to ideas that you disagree with, right? You didn't say that, but like that's one of the ways you think about not engaging in good faith communication, is to say that it's actually dangerous to be exposed to, for example, people's conspiracy theories or something, right? So like that willingness to have some kind of reciprocation in these asymmetric knowledge transfers, which is teacherly authority. So again, I'm being very abstract because, it's a case-by-case basis, I believe, and when we're at this level. And again, we're still talking about the micro. When you look at the macro, which is to say how to change the types of media conversations and journalistic coverages and speech writing and things, so that down here at the micro, it becomes less problematic, right? Because there's the relation between the state of the public culture and the state of our minds as we try to speak to one another. So I'll kind of leave it at that. But again, I don't have answers. I'm actually interested in if people have tried strategies,
Thank you, Evan. Katie.
He said he's interested in something. Ding, ding, ding. I didn't hear exactly what he said. He's interested in strategies. So if I had been there and I was listening well and I caught on to what Evan was talking about, which it sounded like the local response to COVID and how it's being handled and our inability to do it well or ideal. And I'm just trying to go off of memory here and not even giving my full attention to it. And then Zach was responding about teacherly authority, and then I have a response to this, and it's related to these goals and understanding about problems and answers. So when Zach says teacherly authority, you have to pay attention to goals. So if your goals are, and I actually think Evan is begging the question. I think he has the answer. Because I've heard him mention it, and it has to do with like localization. that you have to localize everything. We both understand this pattern that Zach doesn't understand, and he's not actually. I don't think Zach is serious. He's not a serious player. That's the problem. Is like the people who are not serious players are the ones that get the most attention. The more attention you get, the less serious you are, because you're being uplifted by the average human being, the masses. You're not being uplifted by, exceptional human beings, right? You're appealing to the mob, and if you appeal to the mob, you get lifted up. So it's a problem with our sense making system, and that is related to teacherly authority. But so the answer has something to do with localization and goals. So in one community, your goal could be, we are here on Earth, and we do not take vaccines we do not take vaccines unless they are 100% effective, like the rabies vaccine, which is probably dangerous, and many people would disagree with that. But a community may decide to do that. And so they have a different goal. Their goal may be, we believe in a creator that is going to kind of shape our community based on death and sickness and disease, and we do not want to prevent the shaping of the community. And so it's a different goal than the goal of someone who says we need to minimize suffering and minimize death, right? And so we take vaccines. So you have two different goals, very different goals. And so, how does that relate to teacherly authority? Maybe there's someone who actually, maybe the creator is real, and there are people who are connected to the creator and can make predictions about the future, and they have a perspective about vaccinations and about the structure of society and our education systems. And they should receive, and they should, and they have teacherly authority, and they deserve some respect. They need to be lifted up and receive attention. And then, based on someone who ignores the creator, ignores that, they believe there is no creator, no God that loves you. So they've shut out that entire world, so that there's no way that person receives teacherly authority. And so now, with this other worldview and these other goals and values, the person with the teacherly authority is the one who is able to minimize suffering and minimize death. And I would add to that, they would do it in the short term, because the masses and the mob have difficulty thinking about. The more complex the thoughts, as the plan requires more time, the harder it is for the masses to comprehend. This is not good. My computer is acting strange. Not good. Come on, computer. Okay, I'm back. Anyways, I'm going to let them continue. But Zach doesn't have answers. And if you have this complex way of thinking, you could ask yourself, why don't I have answers? And how can I put myself in a position to receive answers, which requires you to then check your email inbox. Maybe you want a Discord server, and maybe you try to figure out how you should, the ideal rules for your Discord server, so that the signals pop up based on your goals. Like, I don't have to try and convert Zach Stein, but what I could do is say, Zach, what's your goals? Okay, well, let's build a Discord server which identifies people who are signaling properly in ways that will help you accomplish your goals. And so I don't have to convert Zach in order to offer support and for him to accomplish his goals. If he wants to minimize suffering and death, it's a set of goals. You can use your technology to do that. If you want to, serve the Creator God who loves you and loves the world, then you can use technology to do that as well. It's a different set of goals. So I can be agnostic about which goals are most important and kind of have empathy for the people with different goals. And then I can say, well, my goals are to be of service. I have a set of skills that allow me to be of service to people with different goals. A tool maker. I'm a tool maker. The tool maker. I am the tool maker.
You had a question.
Yeah, so when I was hearing you speak, a couple ideas were coming up in my mind. The big issue that I see is that bad faith communication tends to be really punchy and sticky and memeable, and like certain types of it anyway. And that's kind of why people do it, because it resonates more in public minds, and it's easier. It's more easily spreadable en masse than nuanced, good faith communication, steel manning your opponents, etc. Another thing is that if someone who's promoting ideas that you agree with is using these bad faith communication tactics, for a lot of people, it makes them feel good because it's like, ooh, I have this sick burn on my opponent, and it kind of like rallies the troops. So I was wondering if in your ideas on good faith communication, you've given thought to communicating in ways that are both in good faith, but also still highly spreadable and like very punchy, or is that against the purpose? And if it is, like, how can we expect it to win?
It's an excellent question, because it's kind of like saying that, we're so used to being exposed to advertisement and propaganda, which is literally designed to be exciting and kind of grab the limbic system and to repeat in your head and to be easily repeatable to others in speech. So the notion of the thought terminating cliche, which I mentioned before, which is both in advertising and propaganda, just gives you a slogan and it's like a mantra. And so we're used to that form of communication. And we think sometimes of, well, if you have a good message to give, right? Well, if we can use the same tactics to deliver the good message. But the problem is that it is a medium is the message kind of problem where, it's not that good faith communication isn't powerful. It is powerful. But because it is unwilling to, even strategically, in a sense, hook you through, a certain kind of meme, right? But it's worth saying that the truth, there's a hunger for the truth, right? Now that is like, it's faked in bad faith, right? The hunger for the truth is co-opted in bad faith.
I mean, there you have it. Like, he thinks that the truth and the hunger for the truth is the primary goal. And he hasn't even asked the question, or maybe he has, but the embedded in that goal is, what is the truth? Which goes back to the Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson first podcast on truth, and I could do my spiel. Might as well do it. I can practice doing it. So you can have the truth about, can I kill every human on earth? And what are the ways that I could use to kill every human on earth? And so we can talk about those as if, what is the truth? We can answer those questions. But then, should I answer those questions? Because maybe we have goals, like, and that the thing that is the most true is the thing that is going to account for the most people's goals across time and space. And so by default, explaining how to kill every human on earth is going to be less true than, for example, explaining how to be of service to people and their goals, right? So I think he potentially has a more narrow definition of truth than I do. And the only people I've ever heard that kind of speak toward truth the way that I think about truth is Jordan Peterson in that conversation with Sam Harris. And I mean, he refers to pragmatists. And so the pragmatists are probably most right, most righteous, right? Um, so truth would be very coupled with righteousness. So, yeah, if you have your blinders up and you're just looking at the truth, like some doing that, if you're doing OCD, obsessive compulsive, and you're ignoring everything else, you can figure out how to kill every human on earth, and you can figure out which way will do it and which way will not do it, right? But baby, you're wasting your time. Like I want to cuss there, right? Mm.
Faith, but it's there. And so, in a sense, when you're in a context of totalized strategic communication, you end up wanting to seek out sincere communication desperately. So you can be taken advantage of by bad faith actors. It's bad, but there's also this desire and a knowing that can tell the difference. So what I think is that, the strategy isn't to compete with bad faith tactics with a similar level of razzle dazzle, right? It's to be able to somehow create these contexts that people can take refuge in, which are like demilitarized zones where socialization can be safe, right? And communication can be as in good faith as possible, right? And so it ends up being like taking the battle out of the mimetic conflict and into some kind of design problem for social space, and into some kind of asking of like, how do we convene conversations? How do we bring people into good faith communication, let's say off of social media or in different contexts where there's mediation or moderation, things of that nature. So that's what comes to mind first.
Yeah, but does he know how to do it? Has he even is he trying to solve that problem? Does he think it's important? Like, I get the sense that in his pursuit of truth, he's in pursuit. I'll call it truth, and I'll say what I'm in pursuit of is true, and he's in pursuit of true. I'm in pursuit of true, and he's in pursuit of true. And so he went to get his advanced degrees, and he's trying to synthesize things and write books, and he has acquired attention from masses and mobs, groups of people, and he's not super popular, but and so the question is how serious are you, right? So yeah, I remember at one point I was like, I could write the book that is about the character who creates peace on earth, and I was like, well, why don't I just try to become the character who's trying to create peace on earth, and then I don't have to go spend all my time in the theoretical space trying to imagine how this would work. And then, by trying to become a person who is able to help create peace on earth, then there will be books written about that process. So, yeah, I feel like he's one of the people like a John Vervaeke, like everyone. I mean, I could just name them all. Bop, 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 bop. Show me someone who's not doing it. So show me someone who's seriously trying to create peace on earth, and I'll show you the mistakes they're making, and the mistakes they're making will be related to their inability to learn. I was recently listening. I just used the quote over here The Coddling of the American Mind with Jonathan Haidt, and he had a co-author who studies cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And one of the piece of advice or suggestion was speak as if you're right and listen as if you're wrong. And so the thing nobody seems to be able to do is listen as if we were wrong, right? And I mean, that's what we all have to get better at. We all are very good at speaking as if we are right, but we're not very good at listening as if we are wrong. No, I mean, Jonathan Haidt's not good at it, right? Like, no one has perfected this thing.
Any follow-up, Katie, or?
Oh, okay, let me think. I think that that's important, creating these contexts for good faith communication that doesn't grab you. And I think that like this is an example of one such space. But like for example, I've seen many cases of people who often like in the public sphere communicate using kind of like razzle dazzle bad faith tactics in the private sphere, or even sometimes just in long form content that they release on their same channels, communicating in good faith. So like, I don't know, like is the hope that because of the nature of these good faith spaces, people when they see them will naturally be drawn to them and just leave the other stuff aside? Or do you think that there's space for meaning an idea like a thought stopping cliche, for example?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great idea. Please do that. Like, I would love to see memes that, you know, do some culture jamming in the space of like the normalization of bad faith. And one thing I think I'll mention here, which is art, right? Which comes out of left field. And art is, in fact, when done in good faith, much more powerful than any strategic meme. Now, of course, art has in large part been, not large part, but has been co-opted by advertising to some extent, right? But the authentic aesthetic expression as a beacon and invitation into good faith communication, the symbolic or imagistic aesthetic expression that's offered as a sincere cry, an expressive cry that doesn't even orient towards mutual understanding, strictly speaking, because it's an aesthetic modality. Again, this is Habermas's thinking, right? That the aesthetic allows for the altering of culture, changing the mood of the culture, and then you can have a different kind of conversation. So it's worth mentioning that, yeah, many of the fixes here may not be, strictly speaking, as I've been suggesting, in like technology and governance design, that there's room for agency in the domain of the aesthetic and the artistic, I think, as well.
It just bothers me that people will think about designing government, but they're not willing to try to create their own kinds of government. It's like you can actually, in our modern world, especially if you have popularity, you can begin to experiment with governing a community, right? Facilitating a community. Like, don't be trying to design a government for other people. Just go run your damn experiment. And then he talks bad about advertising. And it's like, I feel like that's what he's doing. Like, when you're writing these books, when you're paying attention to this person who might help get your message out to a bigger audience, it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing when you ignore someone who doesn't have a platform and you are giving your attention to someone who does have a platform, right? If Joe Rogan tries to get in touch with Zach Stein, he's gonna try to pursue that. And I'm not gonna say he's wrong to do that. But yeah, don't be too quick to condemn advertising, because I think you're doing it I mean, people criticize me because I'm not doing this strategizing thing, right? So the only reason he has success is because he's doing this thing that I might consider to be bad faith. He would not have success if he wasn't doing this thing that is like the vampire, right? The vampire is feeding on attention and seeking more attention, right? So, that can be perceived as bad faith. And he even talks about it with similar language. Like, are you pursuing truth? Right? You could be learning. You could be learning how to create a government. You could be participating, doing the participatory knowledge in creating a government, or you could be seeking attention, writing books, right? And I told you, I said, I, I decided intentionally not to try to write a book. And it's because I didn't, like, would the story that I write, would it be that, oh, I wrote a book, that the character in the story wrote a book in order to get the attention, and so that then that character could uh, begin to build the thing? It's like maybe that's the story, is that the person who wrote the book um, acquired large amounts of attention and was able to kind of steer that ship in the right direction. So is that the story he's writing? That's his story, right? He's writing these books. What is he going to do with it all? Anyways, let's see. I wish I could play music without being worried about copyright. That would be nice.
Which is, again, fundamentally different kind of communicative act, which is an expressive act of sincerity and authenticity, let's say. So I'll offer that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. This might be the last question before we go to breakout rooms, but Yuli, you had a bunch of questions if you want to choose one.
Thank you. So let me just scroll through and see which one I want to focus on. Yeah. So I'm really curious about what a good starting model might be for ways to look at a human system in the context of people building non-naive trust, such that they can actually find things to bond on that might not go all the way to the ontological or metaphysics level or something like that. So as people are, in some contexts, it will emerge naturally. They got to work together for some stuff, build a shed together, whatever. In other contexts, we're trying to create a container. We're trying to create a context where there can be a longer term learning relationship together, people that support each other in the practice of good faith communication. So what are some ways of thinking about a human system, like a human, that, like a starting model, that enables us to more non-naively look at how do we actually build that trust, at the nervous system level, psychological level. But of course, take that wherever you like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a foundational question. I believe that, this is one of the reasons we need psychology, sociology, and humanities and other dimensions of kind of self-understanding of the species, right? How do we deepen our understanding of ourselves so that we can actually build and create environments that allow us to be, I don't know what the right, healthy or non-self-terminating, at least at the level of psychopathology and civilizational, design. So in that sense, I think the question you're asking is a deep one, which one can't solve in the back of a napkin, like here with you. Like, it's about what do we really think how does the human psyche work? how, which is a complex, how do relationships function? It's like, it's kind of that simple. And now the problem is that the academic production of psychological and sociological research has been part of this whole fourth, fifth generational warfare that's been unfolding since the Cold War, right? So there's like a full stop when you do propaganda research and realize how deep and how interesting the relationships are with some of our basic institutions. And so what we're looking at here is a situation where, though the basic questions we're asking are in psychology, sociology, anthropology, archaeology, places like that, putting together a coherent picture is difficult. So I leave it at that as like a research project. I have my own thoughts and work in metapsychology and have ways of thinking about the human, but it's a large project, sometime under the heading of ontological design or values sensitive design, which is and this is the next Consilience paper to drop, which will be basically probably this weekend, which will be about the nature of technology and how to design. You want to design technology that factors second and third order effects on human minds and cultures and relationships. And so in that sense, this question of how do we design it? Well, we have to take a step back and think, how do value systems work, right? How do values interpenetrate with behavior and relationship?
So what he doesn't realize is so he's already a part of an organization and organizations. And so his ability to, or those organizations' ability to produce and be productive is already limited, right? So the project, it's not that he just writes a paper and that they just write a paper. It's actually like they can be running the experiment. So as you, and they kind of are, right? And they actually, when they, like the suspicion is that when they talk about something like bad faith, they have not integrated the accuser. They don't realize they are actually participating in bad faith as well. They have not solved this problem. So, what an organization will do is there will be bottlenecks that are constraining. This is a Ellie Goldratt terminology, theory of constraints. But yeah, the organization will be constrained, and so they have to. So I think there's subconsciously they will be confronted with the problem, the next problem they need to solve. So right now, the projects that him as an individual and the team that he's working with needs to solve for bad faith. Hasn't figured it out. That's his next step. Like once they solve bad faith, once they stop being bad faith actors, they will then arrive at the next problem that they need to solve. So that's where they are at, and so every community is like that. So like you could look at like John Vervaeke and his community, and the problem they are trying to solve is the meaning crisis. Okay, it's not a so what that means is John Vervaeke is experiencing a crisis of meaning. And so how do you solve that problem? Well, him and his community have not solved that problem yet. Because if they did, John Vervaeke would be able to point at it, right? And then he would be able to see, oh, well, the next problem, right? Because there's going to be another problem after that one. The next problem after solving the meaning crisis is that we need to learn how to we need to be able to learn and do error correction. right? Because it took us a long time to solve the meaning crisis within our community. Um, what could we have done differently as a retrospective in order to be more efficient in our ability to solve a problem? Because the truth is that there's thousands of problems to solve. And if you get stuck on this one problem for like 4 years, you're just not gonna, you, the, the end point, wherever you get to on your path, is not going to be as far as another organization that solves the meaning crisis in a week, right? Um, and so they theoretically could win the race, right? They could be further along than the John Vervaeke ship, to use a, I think Grim Gross talked about the Discord servers are like ships, which is interesting. There's a word called worship, so worth-ship. And so a Discord server is like a worth ship. And so I have a Discord server that is a ship that is like a worth ship where I worship um, trying to be of service with regard to, um, there's a few things I do. I'd say primarily try to be of service with regards to technology because it's just the easy one. It's the low hanging fruit that I can do. Like I can write software and I can teach people how to write software. Um, and so that's, I can be of service in the tech support realm, the tech support expertise, and it includes things like project management. Um, if you go over to Grimgross's Discord server, that's a place where you might worship or worship. I would say having fun. I remember Grimgross, like some of the things he said stick out. He he likes to say the thing that's just going to, push that button inside your brain that's going to generate this response that you are going. Would I think sometimes I think he would put it just generates a response, but I bet he really enjoys the one where there's a great laughter. There's a certain kind. If he can push that button to generate joy, I'm sure he would appreciate that. But I think that playing is a theme. Like there's maybe even a worship of playing when I drop to the idea of gamifying peace on earth. I think that resonated with him. And so that ship is a place to worship, play. And play is important. That's what one of the things having kids has taught me. You go to Jacob's Ladder, Discord server. His worship has something to do with secured distributed cognition, and it's kind of founded in Torah. And so that distributed cognition for him extends back to the wise Jews. And I don't think he sees wisdom in a lot of other traditions as well. He's not just stuck with that, but that's like his core, his foundation. But he's interested, that's his worship, is secured distributed cognition. And when he sticks to the basics, he's encouraging people to read Hebrew because he can see how the translations have corrupted the original text. And so, Christians have corrupted the wisdom that the Jews had that was written in Hebrew. And then he would say, like, the Jesus Christ, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, aka Mormons, they went and did something similar, and they corrupted the Christian Bible. So there's three ships. So you got my worth ship that has to do with tech support and providing that basic service. You've got Grimgross's worth ship that has to do with providing let me try this again because maybe this is a clip because I can clip now. So My Discord server is a place where we attribute worth to providing tech support services. Grimgriz's Discord server is a place where we attribute worth to play, maybe even wholesome play. Jacob's Ladder Discord server is a place where we attribute worth to securing our distributed cognition. And so those are, as Grimgriz called it, ships. Each Discord server is a ship, and we attribute worth to those ships. And so then there is a form of worship when we interact in those places. So that's it. And I think I'll end there. Yeah, I can do this when when the organization that pays me is not burning down because of fires.